Hello, I'm Hugh Sun, a banking and payments reporter for CNBC, and today we'll be talking about how technology applications can strengthen the financial system by streamlining and improving supervision, risk management, and compliance. We'll also be exploring the impact these innovations have on the average individual. With me today are Jorge Mogrovejo, Deputy Superintendent of Banking and Microfinance at SBS Peru, Julie Gerdeman, Global Head of Data and Analytics at BNY, and Ancois Plaatje, Director of Banking Supervision for the Bank of Namibia. Now, first of all, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate that. Let's just, for the people at home, set the table a little bit. RegTech, SupTech, these are terms that not everybody has heard about before. Can you take a hack at that?
Yeah, subtech is basically related to the use of technology in financial supervision. I've been in banking supervision since the late 90s, and I can tell how we moved from examining files, loan files, to right now to have all the data being in the cloud or in the superintendency to be examined by the computers. And it's a big difference from the past when it was all manual.
Okay, so subtech is from the perspective of the supervisors. Correct. I'm going to guess RegTech. Do you want to take this, Julie, or?
Sure, it's from the vantage point of the regulators,
okay.
Right? And then working at a financial institution like BNY, that's very, very important, as I'm sure you feel the same way, right?
That's correct. So RegTech is on the side of the financial institutions where they then benefit from the automation of the reporting.
Okay, so I'm going to guess that from each of your individual purchases, there's a different relationship to both of these. Can you go through your own perspective and talk about how you interact with Reg and SupTech?
Well, in my case, as a banking supervisor, it's quite important. It makes people be more productive. We can do more things in less time. But we also might need different profiles of professionals as well. So right now we need more people that are expert on data science. So this is a big change in our industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Julie?
So I lead the fintech, another tech, within BNY, and it's data and analytics, and we oversee about 50 trillion in assets.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah, just a small amount.
Okay, no biggie.
And BNY is what's known as a GSIB, which is a globally systemic important bank, and with that comes a lot of scrutiny from supervisors, regulators, et cetera. Also, really a responsibility to the economy at large. And in my role, I oversee the data platform, right? This massive data platform and all the assets, not only for BNY, but also for our customers, large asset managers, asset owners, banks and broker-dealers that leverage that. So for us, we think a lot about this commitment to responsibility, also to resilience, and we believe that resilience is commercial. I think one thing that I'd love to talk about is really this two sides of the coin, and that is innovation, right? And this constant thrust of innovation and how things are changing so quickly, but also with the commitment to regulation and what that means. And I think one and the other actually kind of drive each other forward.
Sure.
And that is, from a regulatory perspective, institutions like ours, we invest capital and human resources to address them. But it also fires innovation. Like innovation is actually a natural outcome to then address those, kind of what's happening from a regulatory supervisory standpoint. So for us, I like to think of it as both sides of that.
And I'm sure we're going to have time to double click a little bit more on this. I find it fascinating on the BNY perspective.
So I'm also in the space of banking supervision. Julie mentioned the vast amount of data. So for us, it helps to analyze the vast amounts of data, help you to see the health of the institution, also the trends in the interconnectedness across the institution. The predictive model capabilities also help us not only to look at historical data, but now we'll be able to predict the future trends, the future level of the ratios, which help us to be more proactive as well.
Yeah. What are the concerns, the major concerns? Are we talking about, AML? We're talking about money laundering? Are we talking about, concern about criminality? Or are we talking about stability in other kind of systemic issues?
I think both are important. Financial crime has been picking up quite significantly, and that has helped us. Technology has helped us significantly in identifying fraudulent or suspicious transaction. But also from the financial stability side, I think it has helped us to monitor and to be proactive in managing the risks that we see emerging.
Maybe now's the time, Julie, actually, to have this conversation, which is, RegTech, okay, very broad term. You guys have been employing RegTech for a long, long time, I'm sure, since the advent of...
We're 240 years old.
Yeah. And so can you give an overview of the systems involved? And if possible, to talk about how much of that is external, how much of that is in-house, and interaction between those two?
Yeah. As you can imagine, there's complexity to the tech stack, as we like to say, right? Lots of different pieces that come together to deliver on behalf of our clients. So we are, an institution that's 240 years old, lots of different pieces coming together. And we serve a variety of different financial institutions in the world. So those could be very large asset managers, those could be pension funds, banks, broker-dealers, but wealth, right? Wealth is an investment managers. These are all, constituents of ours. So for us, it's very important to consider this, not only the stack and the technology, but also, like you mentioned, the data, right? And the importance of the data and the data sources, right? So for us, we think everything we think about is how do we manage and protect that data? What sort of controls and policies and procedures go around that data? And then, how do we actually leverage new technology like AI, for example?
Now, is it, there is an alphabet soup of, financial supervisors in this country. Occasionally you hear the likes of Jamie Dimon complaining about the overlap and sort of the onerous nature of that. Is it difficult to attend to what regulators are seeking? Is the main dynamic we're being moved by the market and sort of reacting to bad actors out there, or are we reacting to regulators, or is it both, neither?
Yeah, I would actually, I'll answer it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So from our perspective, I actually, and I mentioned this at the outset about the two-sided coin, right? The sort of innovation, but risk mitigation and data privacy, consumer protection, right? Like sort of all those things that come together. And I believe that risk inspires this innovation. So although, the regulatory aspect and this risk mitigation drives the innovation. So what do I mean? It means we incorporate risk and into every decision we make, honestly, as a financial institution. So every product that we innovate, every customer that we interact with, we do consider, how are we serving them? How are we mitigating risks? And honestly, how are we providing technology in a way that's serving them carefully? So yes, there is a regulatory environment. Yes, it will change, right? I think we're going to see some increased changes coming up here, and we need to be able to respond. We need to be able to respond responsibly, right, in a responsive way, in an ethical way, but also quickly, right, to be able to react quickly to meet those changing needs. So those are all the things that we consider. But what's your vantage point, sitting in your seat?
Well, being a regulator, of course, there is this interaction with a supervised entity that I know sometimes they say you're asking for too much. Yeah, I've heard that. But the thing is that we need to establish the solvency of institutions, plenty of information to make sure that the bank is doing correctly in a way that is acceptable. But I think there's a point. We should try to ask for the information we need and to be precise on the information we're going to use.
Yeah. When we think about RegTech, we think about SupTech, two sides, I guess, of an overall holistic coin. Are there advances that you would like to see? Is there low-hanging fruit in terms of what automation Gen AI, other advances can tackle that you see as obvious things to do within the next few years? And lastly, what would be sort of the more ambitious, sort of longer term things that you would hope that the tech could handle?
Yeah, well, the big hope in supervision with the use of these models, LLM and AI, is how to process non-structured information, non-structured data. I was talking about, of course, numbers, financial statements, and so on, but there is plenty of information, texts, that in the past you would need somebody reading thousands of pages to work on that. Right now, we can have a software doing this in minutes, and we can have access to minutes of the board, documents of the bank, and in a few seconds, so that we can be more efficient doing our job.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine there are concerns about false positives as well. So will you talk about the role of the human being in this?
That's why you always need a human above all. So you need somebody to be checking on that. The software will be improving with time. We're aware of that. So we shouldn't just let the software do the job. There's somebody above that doing this kind of check.
Now, Jorge, though, is this something that's in development, that's in use right now in terms of the unstructured data aspect? Because that sounds sort of...
In the case of Peru, we are working currently with proofs of concept. That means we are still designing the projects. We are more into the structured data. We now have dashboards and everything with numerical data. But the big challenge in many developing jurisdictions is to work with this AI with text.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my understanding is, the older sort of flavor of AI or more machine learning, very good at structured data, and then Gen AI is where unstructured data is sort of the value add there. Can you talk about the Namibian perspective in terms of?
So the Namibian perspective is very similar to Peru. We have started with the structured data, and into the new strategic cycle, we're now focusing on leveraging AI for the unstructured data. So it's very similar to the case of Peru.
Yeah. And does that just allow you to do more with what you have and to do a better job? But what's the aspiration there?
So I think it allows you to be more efficient, but it also allows you to have that forward-looking predictive capability, which we did not have in the past. So in the past, you would get data 26 days, a month. Even when you get real-time data, you're still not able to predict the level of risk going forward. So now you're able to see what will be for example, the non-performing loans ratio. You can predict that over 4 quarters. What would liquidity be over the next 4 quarters? And that helps you to be proactive. In the past, you would also have very manual tasks, like, for example, examining the files in terms of whether they have made losses. Now all of that is automated, where you use technology to sort of classify the loan books of banks to see how that loan book is performing.
Julie, do you want to talk about
I love this conversation around unstructured data. In fact, I view it as one of the biggest opportunities that we have, because so much data is unstructured. We look at this through the lens of alternatives, right? And those are, could be different asset classes, private assets, and a lot of that is unstructured data. It's sitting in a PDF, things that you can't really, they're not in tables, it's not things that you can use.
Versus like an Excel spreadsheet, which we would call classic example of structured data.
Exactly. So what the new technology, what the AI allows us to do is grab that, unstructured data and pull it. We actually use it for data ingestion in the platform that I was referencing earlier. So if you think about taxonomies, you can actually use AI to pull this in, and we use it to predict the top taxonomies in our data platform, in the data models that reside there. Well, what does that mean exactly? It means instead of a person spending hours, days, and trying to muddle their way through PDFs, they can actually, the AI will reduce that amount of time. So to your point on efficiencies, it dramatically reduces the time involved in getting data into a usable format, into those, we call it canonical class, but taxonomies for sure. And then the other, you referenced the performance, like, being able to look back, but then look forward in a predictive way. We have also enabled semantic search. So you can actually act like we all in our lives. We use ChatGPT or some other tool to ask and get answers in an institutional way. Now you can ask your data performance or risk exposure, and through natural human language and get that answer back. So things are moving quickly, and that's the capabilities that you can build into the technology that really will make a difference. And beyond efficiencies, the last thing I'll add is it's also about driving growth, right? Because institutional and clients, they want to be able to grow in the right way, in a responsible way, but that enables efficiency and savings, but also driving growth.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the cycle, though, for implementing this. We talked about things in pilot. Is it 3 years out, 2 years out? Is it already deployed on some levels when we're talking about your institution?
Yeah, so we actually have things in what we call private preview, and we're working directly both internally across the firm, across BNY, but also externally with our customers. And to Jorge's point around human in the loop, yes. We keep humans in the loop to ensure that data is protected and we have the proper controls and certifications in place.
Another good example of that is we have a tool that goes through the post in social networks so that we can get a sense of what is people complaining about, if there is some bank being complained or if there is some kind of fraud or bad practice. So in that way, sometimes social networks tells you before you have a formal complaint. So we can be more, let's say, act sooner than in the past.
You have to be responsive to that channel these days. And I guess the thing that comes to mind in this country is with Chase, JP Morgan, our biggest institution, at some point, I think in late August, early September, there was sort of a viral hack or a technique in which people could deposit a check and there was no filter on it, so they could take out the full amount, which is obviously not usually the case.
But there can be noise as well.
Sure.
Social networks, you can have people complaining out of nothing or people that do not understand what's going on. So you need to filter that out and find the real patterns there.
Well, but the sheer volume, if there are hundreds or thousands of people complaining about access to ATMs, then that's would be probably be more signal than noise, one would think. This is a fascinating discussion, and I certainly am filled with optimism talking to you guys. And so I guess the downer in me asks, okay, is there some kind of trade-off here in terms of we have this innovation that seems to be able to really allow a human pilot to scale up and do a lot more than they used to without a lot of the manual drudgery. And so, are there things or aspects about this that, that we should discuss in terms of the potential risks?
Well, as with every new technology, it always comes with risks. The thing is how to manage them. We have several: cybersecurity, data privacy. But the thing is how to learn from mistakes and put the checks on before the problem arises.
Yeah, at BNY we have established an AI hub. So it's a team of data scientists and engineers and product managers and architects. We started several years ago and, gathered lots of ideas and put these ideas through the process to determine in priority order, like which are the things that we would benefit from. And classic use cases that a lot of folks are used to around, summarization of information, automation of some processes. But there are risks, and there are ways to mitigate those. One with using our AI agents called ELIZA, and BNY was founded by Alexander Hamilton. So if you know anything about Alexander Hamilton or have seen the musical, you know that his wife is Eliza, but even to use ELIZA at the firm. We have training, like it's mandatory, right? So you put folks through this training before you could ever use it. And this is the type of, first of all, it's elevating talent, in my opinion, and educating folks, but it's also a risk mitigator of you have to be trained and certified before using these tools. And we're very committed in terms of policy, right? A good example of data policy would be GDPR, the right to be forgotten, right? So you can't maintain data over a certain time. It's gotta be removed. So building these policies, building the processes into the process and the technology itself, and of course paramount is the data security, data privacy aspect.
In Namibia, we have regulatory sandbox and innovation hub, similar to many other regulators around the world. I think that's a good way to allow testing in a controlled environment before you scale it. It also helps us to understand the risks. And together with the regulated entity, we learn, we understand, and we then create that enabling framework where regulation or where innovation can flourish and risk is then also mitigated.
Thank you for that. I'm curious. So many of the financials I speak to are leaning on OpenAI, whether it's direct or through Azure, through the Microsoft channel. Can you talk about the LLMs you guys have in pilot or are using? I mean, is there specific vendors, or do you?
There's no way we could use OpenAI that we cannot share our data with the rest of the world. So we need to buy something from a vendor to have something more restricted.
Right.
But of course that costs, because it's easy to use an OpenAI, but we cannot allow ourselves to share the data.
Through a consultancy then, or is that through like a
Vendors
Deloitte?
are producers of software, of developers.
Yeah.
Ours is unique to BNY, so we created an LLM using several of the ones on the market. We took OpenAI, ChatGPT, we took Llama from Meta, we took Gemini, and sort of created our own. So that's the soft tissue of our brain. And then for the hard part, we actually have NVIDIA. So we have a relationship with NVIDIA in terms of the chips, but we also then created our own. So it's quite unique. And this is all through that AI hub that I discussed.
So am I understanding this correctly? You have your own data centers?
BNY has,
NVIDIA, you have those.
We have
precious
established a
GPUs
relationship with them, for the what we call the brain of Eliza.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm curious. Then, are there obstacles to scaling this up? That you're finding. When I was around a table of AI folks yesterday, and they were talking about the latest OpenAI model of GPT is potentially having some issues in terms of it's not that much better or exponentially better than the previous version. It's potentially hitting some kind of resistance level there in terms of how much better it's going to be versus the investment there. And I guess thematically that makes me wonder then, as you guys are implementing this, requiring vast amounts of data, vast amounts of compute, are there natural kind of speed bumps in the ability to deploy at scale?
Oh, yeah, budgets.
Money. Okay.
And we are talking, in our case, we are public institutions, supervised or central banks. We don't have infinite resources, so we need to be very focused on what we need, how we take step by step what is more urgent, because otherwise we could spend a lot of money. Budget is one thing, the other is human resources. To get these people that have the experience with these kind of things is not easy to get. And in my country, we are not only competing with banks, we're competing with all the industries.
Of course.
Mining,
Tech.
Electricity, energy, whatever. So this is a very tough market to get the right people to work with you.
Are there universities in Peru that are known for CS and this type of stuff? Or
We do, but I personally think that we might need more programs like that. We need to have more young people to encourage them to study these things.
Yeah.
This is the future. We need more people expert on this.
It's funny because the narrative about, sort of disrupting the human being in this case, you really need a lot more people at this point.
Yep, more people working on that. Correct.
Part of it. If you wanted to tackle this.
I think skills, not only building the skills, but retaining those skills, especially within a central bank, it's quite difficult. And the concern that we often hear from the regulated entities is the difference in regulation. So it becomes difficult to scale across jurisdictions because the regulatory requirements differ across the jurisdiction. As much as the Basel Committee try the global harmonization, that still remains a challenge.
Yeah, I do think just that the change and how fast things are changing is driving that concern around budgets, around talent, around the retention of the skill. You mentioned universities. So at BNY, we, through our AI hub, we take scale very seriously. If you think about who we are, and I mentioned the 50 trillion in assets, but we also have established relationships with Carnegie Mellon, with MIT, to ensure that we're bringing that talent on board, really right out of school, which is something that's very important to us. So along with educating our folks on our certification programs, but we're also recruiting talent, kind of emerging talent. The other thing we've done, we were a founding member of Project Veritas through the Monetary Authority of Singapore, right? So that we've kind of got involved very, very early in the commitment to FEAT, fair, ethical, accurate, and transparent, sort of that methodology around AI. So this commitment to scale, and then our commitment to embracing talent and developing it, I think will remain top of mind for us.
I mean, I guess that, for both the supervised and the supervisors, for me, I'm like, how do you find and source and convince young talent that there's a mission there that's noble and that's necessary versus, I guess, the allure of comps or startups or,
We have one thing in our favor, is the fulfillment, the feeling of public service. Of course, it's difficult to retain people, but very often we have people that feel that they feel compromised with what they're doing. And so they can find this compensation and for the public good.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, there's a sense of community as you work on things that are new and you work on things that are hard, right? So it drives this building of community in a profound way because it's a unified mission of, hey, we've got these challenges to solve, whether it's the data and how to make sense of it and get insights out of it, whether it's the tech stack and solving for that. So from that perspective, I do think we can get talent excited. We're a financial institution, a 240-year-old one, but get them excited about that. The other thing I like to mention to folks is there's always, we're not a retail institution, as you know, but there's always a consumer or a human like on the other end of what we're doing. And that's also a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. Like if we're serving a pension fund and those are firefighters, those are teachers, there's someone who is benefiting at the end of the day that our technology, our data platform is serving, right? So we're behind, we're sort of 1 or 2 levels behind that, but the ultimate recipient who's benefiting from that technology is someone who's making a difference. Therefore, I like to think that's driving our mission and our sense of purpose.
So, I'm sorry, did I cut you off on something?
No.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, so we can all agree that the safer financial system is in everybody's interest, with the possible exception of the criminals out there who are, who may benefit from weakness in that perspective. I mean, there has to be, and we may talk a little bit about this, a certain amount of collaboration between the supervised and the supervisors, in order to make this future happen that we talk about, in which, these powerful technologies can be leveraged, to the benefit of financial stability. What is the current state of that collaboration, in each of your respective regions, and how could it be better? How could it, Ancois, do you want to?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Innovation Hub and the regulatory sandbox. So that enables dialogue. It enables the collaboration within Namibia. Then as part of the Cambridge Lab, that also helps the peer-to-peer learning for us as regulators. I think it's important to share lessons learned, to share information, to learn from each other. So collaboration is definitely a cornerstone, but I think we need to do more, especially within Namibia, to build that ecosystem and to build the collaboration and dialogue around that.
We have another space of collaboration, which is among supervisors. We have an association of banking supervisors of the Americas, ASBA. The US supervisors are there. And this is very potent because supervisors that are doing things at work can share with other supervisors how can they improve their ways of doing supervision. I think this is, for many small jurisdictions, it's not that easy to start a program from scratch. So this is when they get, let's say, support from bigger jurisdictions.
Yeah. One of the things that was talked about earlier was technology and emerging markets versus more established developed markets. And in developed markets, sure, there's perhaps a lot of funding and advancement. And however, the flip side of that is there's a lot of tech debt. There's a lot of legacy tech stacks and older tech that you almost have to overcome. And so it's interesting to see the difference with emerging markets who might just not be encumbered by an old tech stack, that they can go straight to the latest technology. And I think you asked the question on collaboration, you got to be able to collaborate on all of those fronts, like the complex mainframe, older tech debt, and then the latest, newest. I mean, I think that was really an interesting conversation earlier today.
Yeah, and before I attempt to land the plane of this conversation, I mean, is there anything out there that you would like to jump in on in terms of things that you're most passionate about, things that you think should be discussed in terms of subtech, RegTech? Yeah.
I think the data residency requirements, I think we hit on it slightly, but with the different jurisdictions and what's required for data, perhaps having to stay within a certain one, and then how can we build and ensure there's infrastructure and the latest developments of technology while still maintaining our commitment to these different jurisdictions. So that's something that's top of mind. But most, obviously on the forefront for us, it's all around how do we leverage AI? How do we really, just grab a hold of everything that's happening, stay on top of it, yet still keep this underpinning of trust that we've established as a financial institution. So this, layer of trust and resilience, but on top of that, the innovation and how we drive innovation.
I think from my side, we've spoken a lot about the benefits to the financial institutions as well as the supervisors, but we often forget the benefit to the consumer. We refer to the operational efficiency. I think the direct benefit to the consumer is lower cost. We've spoken about the use in terms of decision-making, lending, that is also more accessible financial services. Because very often, especially in our jurisdiction, there is quite a lot of concerns around bias in credit, bias in insurance products, and with the use of technology, you're able to provide those services to the end consumer.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're hitting where I wanted to end up with, which is, let's talk a little bit about why the consumer should care about this, about RegTech, about subtech, and about the overall theme of leveraging technology, for financial stability. I mean, why should the consumer, who has a bank account, maybe an investor, and is touched by BNY, in that perspective, how does this benefit them? Why should they care?
I think that the consumer, what they see is right now their banking is all digitized. It's all digital. So they should be aware that the supervisor is also up to the task to supervise these things. And are also using these digital things. Because otherwise, consumer could think, I'm alone. If I have some problem, my supervisor is not up to the task. But no, we're trying to be there and to learn from the same technologies.
Yeah, data protection, data privacy, to me, that just rises to the top of everything, because as a consumer, I think we're in an age perhaps where people are almost taking it for granted, and what they should know from this conversation is, no, that is top of mind and something that we think about as the institution, as the regulators, the supervisor, like that is top of mind. And, that security and protection of data to me is paramount and something that we can never, ever deprioritize. So as a consumer, I always like to say we're an institutional trust bank, but there is a consumer at the end of every transaction, every single one. And that's something we keep in mind, just how we elevate their experience, right? And how they interact with us, but really how we protect them at the end of the day.
Well, so, if we're going to take a wrap on this, I really appreciate your time, Jorge, Julie, and Ancois. This has been a great conversation for me. I certainly learned a lot, and I'm excited to, see what the future brings. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.